Namaste, everybody. Okay, so as we continue on our study of the Bhagavad Gita, this chapter is kind of cool. This one brings up karma yoga. Now, this is something that a lot of people get a misunderstanding about. You hear a lot of people, karma's a bitch. Trying to equate karma with revenge. And really, the word karma just means action. Each and every action that we take in the material world, especially ones that we identify with, they'll have a cause and effect kind of reaction, a cause and effect relationship. For every action, there's a reaction. If the good actions bring about a positive reaction, then negative actions bring about a negative reaction. Now, we deal with these actions and reactions in our current life and our past lives, and that's what shapes our destiny, because our destiny is going to be built up of our cause and effects, our actions and our reactions, and the efforts that we make to try to change the current situation in the material plane. Now, Krishna talks about how you can work in the material world and escape the karma effects, the effects of the reactions from your actions. And like he said in the last chapter, is to act without any thought of reward, or thinking that you're owed the fruits of your labor. Because basically, we struggle to maintain ourselves in this world, and that maintenance causes so much reaction, the actions of trying to maintain the physical body. And then, we go and we do other funny things to make that a little bit easier, So some people steal, they cheat, they rob, they lie, and they think they can get away with these things, but in reality, the reactions come, You always have a reaction from doing something negative. A negative action will bring a negative reaction, and a positive action will in turn bring a positive reaction. Now we go back to the Bhagavad Gita, and we're on the battlefield with Arjuna and Krishna. And Arjuna doesn't want to fight in this huge battle, and he says this to Krishna. Now Krishna encourages Arjuna to fight because that's his duty in life. He's a warrior, and there's no better death for a warrior than to die in battle for a righteous cause. So he's like, why are you afraid to fight? Arjuna comes up with all these answers. I don't want to kill my cousins, my teachers on that side, my grandfather's on that side. All these people are taking up arms against me, and I'm thinking I shouldn't fight. So Krishna's like, but you were wronged, and there's a reason why we're all gathered here, and you can't just give up at the last minute. So he's further encouraging Arjuna to act, because action is the only thing that we have in this material world. This material world is known as the world of desires. Everything we desire, we can attain through action. So, we see people running around all the time trying to, either pray for or work towards what they think they want. And we also know the great curse or blessing, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. Because in this world, everything has a reaction. Everything has something built with it. So, really got to try hard to be conscious about what we choose in this material world and how we act. And that's karma. And this is what we're speaking about right now in chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga. Arjuna said, O Jardhananda, O Keshava, why do you urge me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively what is most beneficial for me. The blessed Lord said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who realize the self. Some are inclined to understand him by empirical, philosophical speculations, and others are inclined to know him by devotional work. So you can either think about God, he's a good guy up there, he controls everything, or you can actively know him by your devotional service towards God. Action. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. All men are forced to act helplessly according to the impulses born in the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So, like I said earlier, we're all influenced by the modes of material nature, which are goodness, passion, and ignorance. And these things are just mired in with material nature. And these are what compels us to act even when we try to train our mind and our senses. But sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of something like, oh my God, am I really doing this? It's because you feel like you're compelled to act. One who restrains the senses and organs of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. I always said, what if one day you're walking through the market and you see a man, a sadhu, and he's sitting cross-legged and he's levitating above the ground, floating. And you'd be like bewildered, wow, how does this man do that? How does he levitate? And you ask somebody, hey, how does this guy float? And the guy says, well, he goes up into the mountains and he lives in a cave for 11 months out of the year. And on the 12th month, he comes down and he can float. And so he sits there and he floats, for like a month, and people give him money and supports himself that way. And I'm like, wow, man, I would love to do that. So I go run up to a mountain, I find a cave, I take off all my clothes and I sit in this cave just like the monk. And, it's cold up here. Oh my God, I'm hungry. Oh, what's it, 6 o'clock? Oh, the Simpsons are on right now in the village. Like, the mind never stops. Now, obviously, this man who can float is not going through all that. He's not a pretender. So we should only bite what we can chew. Take our baby steps. We're all going to be enthusiastic and excited about the next step. But, hey, I've seen it too many times, man, where people think like, because their personal experience was powerful and it made them enthusiastic, that all of a sudden they want to go out preaching, charge money. They think they have the answer. I read this book by, this great saint, and now I've dreamt about him and I'm attached to him, and I'm going to teach people lessons. It's not how it works, man. Please, please, please don't delude yourself. On the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. So he's saying that bhakti, or devotional service, is more superior than dry philosophical speculation. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work. We work and we get the money and we think, I'm going to buy a PlayStation, I'm going to buy big steak dinner, I'm going to buy food, I'm going to take out my girlfriend, I'm going to buy princess dresses for my daughters. Like, we think all these things, but really all these things should be given to Krishna, and then Krishna will maintain our lives, right? We have a portion that we can use for our lives, but we should always know that Krishna is the proprietor of everything in creation. The earth, the food, everything that we sustain ourselves with is all owned by somebody else. We're just borrowers in our little lifetime. We're supposed to be caretakers and borrowers. As it says in the Bible, we're caretakers of the earth, But we're deluded by this material nature, thinking that we are the doer, we are the energetic, and causing all of this to happen when we're not. We're actually part of the energy of this world. God is the supreme energetic. So he's also the supreme enjoyer, because he creates all these things. But while we're here maintaining our lives, we try to steal what we enjoy. We can't enjoy by ourselves, for ourselves. We have to give to God, and then God will give us our desired enjoyment and distress, as is owed to us because of our karma, because of our actions, past lives and in our previous lives and in this life. All combined up. Goodness, passion, and ignorance all mixed into a big ball, past, present life, everything we've done and we're going to do, we just got to figure it out, man, and try to dovetail our good actions towards it. So Krishna continues, work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, be thou happy by this yagna sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you all desirable things. So back in the ancient days, they would have sacrifices called a yagna, where they would light a fire, and they would sacrifice certain things in there that people used in their daily lives, give them to God, and God would take care of them. They would say if you wanted it to rain, you would have a sacrifice to the rain god, and then you would do all these, certain things, put these certain, grasses and fruits and butters and things like that. Doesn't necessarily mean killing animals, even though that does sometimes happen. But to sacrifice the things that we need in our physical life, a portion of it, for the gods, and the gods give us the means for it to replenish. What we desire is the things that the earth provides. That's what keeps us alive. Water, food. We build our shelter from the forest, from the earth, the bricks and the wood. So these things maintain our lives. So we have to have reverence for them. And taking time out of our busy lives and maintain our lives and take our time off to, give acknowledgement to the natural world, natural material world that actually sustains our material body, our food, our crops, like I said, the forest, earth itself, all these things. So we have to sacrifice our time, our energy, sometimes our possessions in order to keep moving forward. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifice, will also please you. Thus nourishing one another, there will reign general prosperity for all. So when we have this symbiotic relationship with nature and the controllers of nature, everybody prospers. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, apply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So that's why we pray before we eat and actually go as far as to offer the food that we are going to consume to Krishna first and eat only his remnants. That's why people who are on the path of Krishna consciousness are vegetarians. Not because vegetarianism is necessarily more healthy than meat eating, but we only eat food that is sacrificed first to Krishna. And Krishna only accepts vegetarian foods as a sacrifice for him. He says also in the Bhagavad Gita, which we'll get to, that he will accept a leaf, water, fruits, grains, things like that. So that's why people in Krishna consciousness, the Vaishnavas, and a lot of spiritually minded people in general, try not to harm animals and just, eat vegetables and things, which are also living organisms, which you do incur karma by reaping and eating. You pull a carrot out of the ground, it's the roots of that plant, you're killing it, and it does have a soul. All living things have a soul. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by the performance of yajna, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. So, just like I was saying, you have that symbiotic relationship with the demigods. They send the rain nourishes the crops, and we subsist on those crops. Regulated activities, as prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. That's why we talk about meditating, austerities, things like that are actually, considered a sacrifice, because you're stopping your daily ego routine, just concerned about bodily sense enjoyment. When you sacrifice that, and the more you sacrifice it in varying degrees, you're able to dovetail your spiritual and material efforts. So Krishna continues. My dear Arjuna, a man who does not follow this prescribed Vedic system of sacrifice certainly leads a life of sin. For a person delighting only in the senses lives in vain. One who is, however, taking pleasure in the self, who is illuminated in the self, who rejoices in and is satisfied with the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. Even kings like Janaka and others attained the perfectional stage by performances of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. As Krishna says, whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. O son of Pertha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor if I have need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in work. This is God talking. I don't need anything, I don't want anything, yet I'm still engaged in work. For if I did not engage in work, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. If I should cease to work, then all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all sentient beings. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to the results, similarly, the learned may also act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. Let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attracted to fruitive action. They should not be encouraged to refrain from work, but to engage in work in the spirit of devotion. So he's saying, don't disrupt the minds of people that just want things for things. Let them take their baby steps. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities, which are in actuality carried out by nature. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the difference between work and devotion, and work for fruitive results. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior to the performer's lack of knowledge. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with mind intent on me, and without desire for gain, and free from egotism and lethargy, fight. One who exhibits his duties according to my injunctions, and who follows the teaching faithfully, without envy, becomes free from the bondage of fruitive action. And when you want less, you gain more, Trust me there. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not practice them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and doomed to ignorance and bondage. They're to be stuck in this cycle, the samsara, cycle of birth and death, always craving things. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows his nature. What can repression accomplish? So, what we need to do is dovetail all of our efforts spiritually with our material efforts. And then, we start to gain wisdom, actual wisdom. Attraction and repulsion for sense objects are felt by embodied beings. But one should not fall under the control of senses and sense objects because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Happiness and distress, either one. You can be all happy because you feel like I'm so woke, look at me meditating, I'm such a good meditator. That's egotism. It is by far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though they may be faulty, than another's duties. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duties is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Or as they say on the airplane, put the oxygen mask over yourself before helping somebody else with their oxygen mask. You'll be better situated to help them once you can breathe. Arjuna said, O descendant of Vishnu, by what is one impelled to sinful acts and unwillingly, as if engaged by force? So Arjuna's asking him, why do I do things that are against my own nature, my own best interest? I feel compelled to do things sometimes. And anybody that's been addicted to anything knows what this is like. You feel compelled to go back to, your crack or your opium or whatever, even though you know it's not good for you. But you're just compelled to do it, You might get away for a while, and then you see yourself, going back to these negative habits, A lot of times people find themselves in romantic relationships that just aren't, beneficial. They're toxic relationships, but yet over and over, we find ourselves getting put in the same situations. Arjuna asks his guru, just happens to be God, why? So his answer should really, really intrigue us. The blessed Lord said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material modes of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Lust. Lust, it's akin to greed. And in the 80s, it was a lot of thing where, Wall Street people would say greed is good. You may think greed serves you for some purpose, to gather the resources around you so you can survive. But the actual definition of lust and greed will never suit your eternal purpose of trying to go to heaven, trying to go back home to Godhead, trying to end the cycle of birth and death. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, Similarly, the living entity is covered by different degrees of this lust. Thus, a man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So our soul is surrounded in this body that's just full of desire. It's full of lust. Ooh, I'm cold, I need a jacket. Oh, I'm hungry, I need food. I see this, I desire that. Ooh, I smell that, I want this. We need to curb all those things. We need to settle the mind, calm the mind. You do that through certain types of meditation. Because once you're calm, you make better decisions. Oh, that's food. And you let that thought just pass through your brain. Instead of acting on that desire, you're able to let the thoughts pass more calmly. The senses, the mind and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust, which veils the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So our senses are what confuses us, right? Because we're really not these bodies, but yet we're always confused by the urges of the body. Therefore, O Arjuna, the best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and realization. Regulate your senses through meditation. You're able to slay the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than intelligence. So you got to understand that the working senses are superior to dull matter, like a book or a rock. But the mind, which controls your senses, is higher than your senses. And intelligence, which the mind uses, is still higher than just being the plain mind, being led around by the senses. And he is even higher than the intelligence. And he, who we truly are, is the soul, which is eternally full of knowledge and full of bliss. Sakshit Ananda. Thus, having oneself to be transcendental to material senses, mind and intelligence, one should control the lower self by the higher self, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. And that's chapter 3, Karma Yoga. So once you have some kind of knowledge, and then you have somebody that can explain that knowledge to you like a guru, you're set in this world. All you need to do is follow your guru's instructions to be happy in this world. Doesn't mean it's going to make it easy. It just means you're going to be happy. And then hopefully, in the end, we go back home, back to Godhead. So let's dovetail our efforts, our spiritual and our material efforts, and try not to expect, to be the enjoyer in this world. God will let us enjoy similarly as He'll send us distress. It's already out there because of our past actions. We will enjoy and we will suffer accordingly. Okay? Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, everybody. Radhe Radhe.